All right, so I'm getting ready and getting prepared for my IndyCar debut today. Yes, I'm racing an IndyCar. It's on iRacing. It's virtual, but I'm still looking forward to it. We're going to Twin Ring Motegi. This is my system. It's a Carolina Sims unit, sim rig, and it's really, really cool. Look, I'm going retro. I'm going, I don't know, 1980s, 1990s IndyCar, because I'm still using this shifter. There's no paddle shifters in NASCAR. We don't use paddles. None of that stuff. Old school. And if you need any telemetry, look, it's just straight up buttons. All it is buttons. Buttons everywhere. All right? So it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to thank everybody at IndyCar. I've had some awesome time so far practicing and getting ready in some of the practice races. The IndyCar group of drivers has really been cool to invite me in and be a part of it all. So ready to roll. Let's have some fun. Let's rock this. Rowdy energy, you better grab one, sit back, and enjoy the show.
And it's great to have Kyle Busch in the field this week. Are you ready to get things going? Well, we most certainly are. A true legend to give the command. Here is Mario Andretti.
Drivers, start your engines.
Oh, and you know that if Mario could be a part of this, he would be. Position, he was thrilled after qualifying. Time to bring the action back at Twin Ring Motegi in Japan, and Wickens goes straight to the front.
Terrific jump from Wickens as Will Power slots right in behind him there. And now Power has a run and a look to the outside. And I think, Paul, you're going to want to have clean air for as much as you can today, because getting through 3 and 4 is tough, especially when you're 3 wide.
Yeah, the tire wear is going to be a factor, though. These guys will be running 2 to 3 rest here for a little bit. But as we get into the stint and start burning off fuel, you're going to get tire wear and you're going to start sliding up the track.
How about Tony Kanaan further back in that green 711 car as Power looked to the high side? Harvey's kind of trapped behind the gearbox of Wickens there, and that's Oliver Askew in the Aero McLaren. Oh, big shot. I think that might have been Kanaan. I believe that was Tony Kanaan with a big accident on the opening lap. Huge disappointment for Kanaan, who's put a lot of time into this, as now Power is flirting 3 wide, looking up the middle as Jack Harvey goes to the point.
It was Tony Kanaan because Kyle Kaiser in the other green and white car is still running. So Jack Harvey at the front, Oliver Askew, here's Power. Oh, Power and Wickens are together, and that's a great save.
That was a big-time save. Will Power got into the back tire of Robert Wickens. They both slid sideways. Robert Wickens now falling through the field as Chilton gets spun around, doesn't hit the wall, no damage it looks like, but there's Scott Dixon now passing Will Power.
Oh, how quickly it all goes wrong for Robert Wickens. That terrific save, but it got the right rear tire hot, and now he's fallen well down the order.
Dixon and Power getting into it. Here comes Marcus Ericsson. As we take a look at Kyle Kaiser, Kaiser's running well inside the top 10. He's in 8th in the Juncos Racing.
Look at the concentration, Townsend, that it takes to drive one of these iRacing machines. I have to say that this is probably, at least for me and you, I think it's more difficult than actually doing the real thing. These guys have really gotten good on these things.
First caution of the race.
Caution's out, lap 5. Yellow flag. And I was just going to pick up on Kaiser. If you noticed, he has completely blacked out his driving environment. And one of the reasons for that is that any peripheral distraction when you're doing this sim racing can really throw you off your game. So he's fully tunneled in as we see that Juncos car of Kyle Kaiser currently sits 8th under caution. Colton Herta just behind him there in 9th. Let's take a look at this one more time, Paul. Elio Castroneves in the Pennzoil car gets high in 1 and 2.
Oh, looks like a little contact right there. Nice save though, and then just rear-ended.
I think that was Takuma Sato who was involved. Oh, and Sebastian Bourdais, they're right at the very end. Collect. So a multi-car accident. The drivers were predicting this because they say for as exciting and as fun as this track is, as the two of you know all too well from real racing, that They figured that it was going to be a little trickier than last week, and they predicted that there may be more accidents this week, and we've seen that.
Well, one of the reasons for that, Diff, is that this setup that every driver is running, the exact same setup, it's a fixed setup race. You can't make a roll bar adjustment in the cockpit, no weight jacker adjustment. Everybody has the exact same car, but the way in which you work your tires is so important, because this setup will start to go loose. You will start to develop more oversteer as the run goes on. And going back to your patience comment, Lee, at the start of the race, that's really what's going to make the difference, is conserving your tires. And Marty, what's going on from pit lane? What do you see right now?
Well, there are some teams pitting, Townsend, right here, and there's a lot of talk of the phrase net code. Now, if you're a frequent iRacer, you know what that means. That's when your internet connection maybe isn't as quick as it needs to be, and so cars will literally at times disappear, and it allows you to think you can race closer than you actually can, but you can't race that close because of the net code issues. So sometimes that's an issue in iRacing in the virtual world. So when you're going to do that, you will have issues. So a lot of the drivers right now talking about net code, latency. I know, Townsend, you've been iRacing a little bit lately, so you know what that means. It's just internet connection, and that is one of the perils of iRacing.
Oh, well, it's just the perils of the state we all find ourselves in. Everybody desperate for more broadband, especially on the upload side. I was in a bit of an argument with my local cable internet guy up on the pole yesterday, trying to get me to get him to turn me up in my neighborhood. So, Paul, you know what that's all about. You've had some issues out where you live, as we see Colton Herta in that Capstone Energy car, working the caution, I'm sure, trying to save fuel as best he can.
And Townsend,
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more people nowadays with the virus and everything that's going on. There's a lot more people at home, and there's a lot more people on their computers, so it's making life tough.
As we see, the Andretti Harding Steinbrenner Capstone turbine entry there for Colton Herta. We want to say that all of the Andretti cars this week are running the initials S, and that is for Hank Steinbrenner, who passed away earlier this week, the co-owner of the New York Yankees, and of course, father to George Steinbrenner IV. Great friend of Colton Herta, and of course, part of the organization, and one of the driving forces to get Colton that IndyCar ride into part of the forming group of Harding Steinbrenner Racing. And so, George, our thoughts are with you and your family, and for the loss of your father. And I know that he was a big race fan, just as you are, and he was a driving force behind you. So our thoughts with the Steinbrenner family, everybody at Andretti Harding Steinbrenner Racing as well. Ryan Hunter-Ray, Andretti Autosport teammate to Colton Herta, tucked in there behind. Ryan has been burning up the highway, so to speak, in between Fort Lauderdale and Miami, get down to Jeff Siegel's sim setup there in Miami to compete, and he's got up to speed very nicely with a decent result last weekend as well. So, and there we have Santino Ferrucci and his respective setup.
Another system, like you said, Townsend, blacked out in the background. These sims nowadays, you can have motion or non-motion, but what I've found driving them is if you don't block out, like you said, all your peripheral vision, it can really throw your equilibrium off. So these guys this has gotten so serious, and these guys really want to do well. But here's another example. Graham Rahal at home has been very competitive. He's just in his bedroom.
Or one of the many rooms. That house actually featured in the Orange County Register a few days ago, currently on the market for $8.5 million. And there's TK. He's tunneled in, no distractions, glasses on, perfect vision, ready to go. And I'm sure he's frustrated with the way things opened up for him with that early accident. Currently sits 31st, and back there with Tony Kanaan, just in front of Tony Kanaan, is Kyle Busch. Not sure how he ended up back there. But here we go to green, Diff.
Yep, ready to get going again. Just the one caution so far in these early laps. It's Oliver Askew.
Jack
IndyCar
Harvey.
Rookie.
Jack Harvey makes a nice stop, but here comes Will Power down the inside as he's now recovered from that kind of half spin, and he's recovering back in the top three.
And behind Power, Ganassi teammates, Ericsson and Dixon. We ride on board with Jack Harvey. He had a nice run of momentum, but you can tell Harvey thinking patience right now. Only 9 laps in, 100 laps to go. He's going to conserve those tires and just sit back here and learn, save a little fuel, and get it figured out.
Quick update on Sage Karam from Dreyer and Reinbold Racing in the Wix Filters car. Started 31st out of 33, and he's already up to 21st, so he's on a charge.
Yeah, he just passed Pato O'Ward, now up to 20th. His next guy in line is Alexander Rossi. As we look out the back of Sage Karam's car.
Amazing how realistic this is, Paul. I can remember racing here, you know, a couple, maybe decade and a half ago, and the way that things are fanning out and how narrow the groove is getting is so accurate to how we used to do it back in the day. You can run too wide here in 1 and 2, but you get down to turn 3 and 4, that radius tightens up, and you have to be perfect as Rossi gets wide into the wall.
Yeah, this is a much different track than last week in Michigan. Very similar setup in terms of aerodynamics, but this is a much flatter track, has less banking, and a much tighter turn 3 and 4. So these guys are approaching turn 3 and 4 at about 225 miles an hour and having to brake and downshift a couple gears and then accelerate off the turn. So a lot different than last week's race.
And you can see Rossi in that yellow and blue Napa car got a little caught out in 3 and 4. Now power looks to the high side. Is he going to try to hold it or no? He'll back off, tuck in to Jack Harvey and try to get a good draft down the front straightaway. I think that's what you have to do if you show high into 3 and 4. Now he shows low. This should be an advantage with the shorter distance and make Harvey go the long way around. Works for Will Power there. He has the grip and the position.
Yeah, nice over-under move, but Jack Harvey gets a run. We'll see if he pops out here and takes a look. But it looks like, Townsend, it's going to be a battle right down to the flag as these guys try to get the good drive off the last corner to the finish line.
And I'll tell you, a guy that's really improved in the last couple of weeks is Scott Dixon, sitting very competitively there in third. He was a latecomer to the INDYCAR iRacing Series diff, but he's learning really fast.
Really well. He was joking around saying, I'd like to just get past the start line this week after last week's huge crash coming to the green. So this is a much improved performance from Scott Dixon. How about his Ganassi teammate Marcus Ericsson doing well also in 4th place at the moment, just ahead of the Arrow McLaren SP driver Oliver Askew.
These Firestone tires on these cars are the same for everybody. It's a pretty hard tire town, so you know that when we used to race here. So we're going to see some fall off in these cars as they get into this last corner here. I think this is going to be the trouble spot where guys slide up and make contact.
Well, you could see there that Marcus Ericsson in the red and white car really didn't want to have to run too high in the groove because the grip really starts to fall off. So he was just as close as he could be to the right rear tire of Askew in the black and orange Arrow cars. We go back on board with Kyle Kaiser, and he's in the zone.
Yeah, you know what happens when you get out of the groove at this track, Townsend. Tell the story of what happened to you at Motegi.
Well, I brushed the wall with my right rear tire. I was running, I don't know, third or something, and then did a pit stop, and then the right rear suspension broke on me with fresh tires on. I had about a 98G impact, pre-safer barrier, and that feeling stuck with me for many months. That was before we knew anything about concussions.
That was 2002. I remember I was calling that race with Jeremy Shaw, and we were excited for you as a rookie, headed for your first kart podium, and unfortunately it didn't materialize. That was a hard hit, mate. I remember that very well.
Yeah, it stayed with me, like I said, for many months. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with the room spinning, and I thought it had something to do with the vitamin C I was taking. Will Power up front.
Simon Pagenaud's trying to work his way through the field there. He just made a move in turn 3, and it slid up the track. So tire wear now starting to become an issue as we look at Felix Rosenquist does a nice pass on Kyle Kaiser.
And I'm really getting the feeling early on here, Paul, that you're not going to want to give up the inside here. You really need to dive down early, get to the white line, and protect the inside, because you let somebody by there like Kaiser did, it just seems like you're going to start to get freight trained. We'll have to see if that's true as the stint develops. But right now, it seems like right here, you want to be right down there on the apron and protect that line from anybody behind.
Yeah, absolutely. You run out of real estate real quick. The wall comes up on the exit pretty fast. The corner continues. It's almost like a little hairpin corner similar to New Hampshire. So it's a lot tighter than this corner 1 and 2. So you can see the guys can fan out a little bit in 1 and 2 and run side by side. But right now, with the tire wear on these Firestones, it's a one groove line down here in turn 3 and 4.
Let's get a Kyle Busch update with Marty.
Yeah, right now Kyle Busch is back in 27th position. There were 17 cars, Lee, that actually pitted, or from 17th on back, they pitted 15 cars total. So Kyle Busch, as he mentioned to me before the race, struggling qualifying with iRacing. He has had a lot of speed. In fact, Thursday in the practice race, he finished second in that race. So as we ride on board with Kyle Busch in the number 51 car, look for him to hopefully make his way towards the front of the pack. Also, Alexander Rossi got in an accident. We saw him bounce off the wall earlier. He is now down a lap. But again, 15 cars pitted, Lee. We're going to have to see if they can make their way forward. Felipe Nasr right now, the highest running of those cars. He's in 15.
Guys, I gotta give Rowdy Busch props, because it is incredibly hard to drive these cars around this track. But think about everybody else in this field, Townsend, has paddle shifters, and he's using a gear shift. And at this track, you're not wide open. You're having to do a couple downshifts. So that's making it a lot harder work than all the rest of these guys.
Well, no sympathy for Kyle. We saw at the Open that he took great pride in the fact he was going old school with the gated shifters. So I'm going to put that on Rowdy here, but he doesn't have any issue going around the high side to Helio Castroneves there. And don't forget that our guest racer last week, Dale Earnhardt Jr., didn't really show much aggression at all early on, and it turned out to be a great strategy. Earnhardt saved fuel, didn't have to come to pit road, and ended up with a podium finish in his first ever go. So perhaps we're seeing a very patient Kyle Busch today and trying to change his strategy on the fly.
Remember, one of those keys to the race is patience, and Dale Jr. showed a lot of that last week. Speaking of Kyle Busch, I was chatting with his brother Kurt earlier today. Kurt's keen to do one of these iRacing IndyCar challenges, so maybe, just maybe, we might see both brothers compete. We'll wait and see. There's Zach Veach down on the low side on the right-hand side of your screen. Yellow, black, and blue Gainbridge and Andretti Autosport Honda go on board. This is what it looks like. There's the beach down to the low side there.
Yeah, you can see up on the high groove right there is Ryan Hunter-Reay. So that high groove, Townsend, is working. He got a little bit of momentum coming off the corner, but you got to brake hard here and downshift a couple gears. And you need a good drive off the corner.
That's the key, Paul. You have to make sure that you don't have to make a throttle adjustment at corner exit when all that momentum is building. And as the battle for 11th continues there, Veach goes to the inside.
You can see that momentum on the high side as they come off turn 2. That opened up line seems to carry a little bit more top speed, but the draft is big. So if you're right in the back bumper of these guys, you can see they pull up. So you can see third gear on this in-car shot coming off the corner, and he'll start going up through the gears up to 4th, and then 5th and 6th.
I'm surprised how close they're running the ratios there, basically running 3 or 4 top gears there. So taking advantage of the narrow rev band on some of these motors. Is McLaughlin now having a really nice run. McLaughlin is up to 5th, I believe, working Marcus Ericsson just up ahead, and he might get Ericsson here as they go to turn 1.
Back in his familiar shell color scheme this week. And speaking of a week, as he dives to the inside, Scott McLaughlin checks another one off the list, down on the low side there of Marcus Ericsson. In the past week, McLaughlin's got to race against one of his idols in Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Michigan International, as he goes side by side now with Marcus Ericsson. And then midweek in his regular racing series, that is the Australian Supercar Series, in their esports and iRacing events, he got to race at Silverstone in the UK and Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in Spain up against current Formula One superstar Max Verstappen. So he's had a thoroughly enjoyable week as he continues to do a large volume of iRacing events.
I'll tell you what, those guys down there in New Zealand, Australia, pretty handy at this iRacing, Paul. My teammate from Daytona, Shane Van Gisbergen, just totally crushed it at Laguna Seca in the IMSA race, coming home 2nd. And like McLaughlin, I discovered that Shane's been doing this for about 10 years pretty intensely. So those guys are well ahead in terms of seat time at this game, as some of these cats further back still trying to figure it out. There's Robert Wickens trying to fight his way back to the front. He's worked his way back to 7th, started on pole, and pretty amazing just how quickly he's figuring out the new hand controls that he's working with.
Yeah, he's only been doing this a couple weeks. Like you said, Scott McLaughlin has a lot of experience in this. Robert Wickens only a couple weeks, and he's been on this sim racing non-stop since he got his SimCraft unit, Townsend. You know as well as I do, equipment in these things is everything. There's so many variations of equipment out there, and it's all about time in the seat.
Yep. And just having the confidence and the feel that you need, the feel that you really don't have, that's trying to be simulated for you on your home sim. Rinus VeeKay in a big battle right now. That's with Colton Herta. Colton Herta in the black and white car, VeeKay in that Sonax car.
And this is VeeKay's first appearance in the iRacing IndyCar Challenge here in the Firestone 175. So he'll be enjoying his time. He's in that car, of course, because he's sharing that as part of the Ed Carpenter Racing squad. And Ed, the team owner and driver, he's in the 50 entry this week. So there are 3 Ed Carpenter entries, and Ed's running that 50 car because that is the number on his son's back and his son's hockey team.
I think that was Kyle Kaiser, Paul, that got way high coming out of turn 4, lost a huge amount of momentum and positions. As here comes Colton Herta, capstone car, making a move to the inside, going to have a look. Will they go too wide?
Yeah, it's really tempting, Townsend, to run it into the corner in 3 deep, and then you just can't get back to the throttle and you run out of real estate on the exit.
We'll say it once again, patience is going to be important here. Colton Herta making a move. It looks like he might get the pass done here in turn 1, but VeeKay with great momentum on the high side coming out of turn 2. We're still about 5 or 6 laps from pit lane, Marty, and the battle under a green flag stop is going to be epic. You're going to have to be very careful.
Yeah, Townsend, that's what's coming up. All these drivers and the strategists, and yes, they're real strategists that are with them on Sundays when they're racing. The guys calling the shots in a real IndyCar race are the ones calling the shots today here in iRacing. We ride on board with Ryan Hunter-Ray. We're coming up about 10 laps from stops or so, and Simon Pagenaud up front is getting a little frustrated with Oliver Askew, who he can't quite seem to shake. Pagenaud in 6th, Askew back in 7th, but all of these drivers coming up to stops. And Townsend, we saw it in warm-up this morning. They spent about 15 minutes working on getting onto pit road. Last week, that was a huge issue. We saw a lot of wrecks coming onto pit road. It could be a factor today as well. And Lee, the battle for second heating up as well as Scott Dixon takes that from Jack Harvey.
This is an awesome performance from Harvey and Dixon, 2 relative newcomers to iRacing. For Harvey, he's been doing some dirt track racing, fellas, along with Zach Veach, so just getting as much seat time as he can as we go on board the Shell machine of Scott McLaughlin. Once again, up early in Brisbane, Australia to make this race, but he's getting used to it now.
And Paul, I just want to point out his hands, because the position and the movement of his hands is totally dictated by what he's actually doing on his sim. It's exactly the same, and look at how quiet all the hands are. Very little movement.
Yeah, the track, you can see the track is rubbered in, so when these guys start coming for pit stops, they're going to have to go down onto the apron below the white line, and you can see there's no rubber down there, so it's going to be a lot more slippery. So the time gained, that if you can get around that apron fast and into the pit lane and not get a speeding penalty, is going to pay off huge benefits on the racetrack. But you got to not spin out. We saw it at the race last week. A lot of guys had trouble getting into the pits.
Update from race control, the 31 Carlin machine of Felipe Nasr has been parked. There are some signals, some connection issues there, and when a car just disappears and then reappears in the race, that's very off-putting to the drivers around, so race control had no option there but to park Felipe Nasr. Meanwhile, Will Power, Scott Dixon, Jack Harvey, Scott McLaughlin, and Simon Pagenaud in the top 5. You know how, guys, you were talking about the hands of Scott McLaughlin and soft and smooth? Elio Castro Neves sent me a video, a top and bottom video today, and he said, and it was him and McLaughlin, and he said, see if you can work out who's done a lot of iRacing and who hasn't. And McLaughlin's hands were hardly moving, and Elio's were all over the place. And he said, easy to pick, isn't it?
Well, speaking of hands, you notice that with some of the live camera feeds that we see, that the drivers are actually wearing their Nomex gloves. And you might wonder, well, why do you need fireproof gloves when you're racing at home? It's because of the sweat. because the anxiety when you're doing this is really high. My hands get pretty sweaty, and if I don't have gloves, it's really hard to keep grip because the torque feedback, there's a guy that doesn't need gloves. Maybe he's got ice in his veins. But Graham Rahal, that Fanatec wheel that he's using right now, that thing can produce like 25 Newton meters of torque feedback, as I think that's Marcus Ericsson going to pit lane. And so you really need to have a good grip. That's why you see a lot of drivers going to gloves now.
Yeah, you can see the vibration, as you watch Pato O'Ward right here as he turns into the corner. You can see that wheel just kicking back a little bit because that's the force on the wheel and the force from the road that you feel back through the wheel. So very realistic to the real thing out on the racetrack. So these guys now are starting to pit, so we'll see if there's any mistakes on pit road.
O'Ward is down in 28th position. All right, Hunter Ray on pit road. DHL machine for Andretti Autosport. The Honda exits pit road. Some fresh Firestone rubber in this Firestone 175.
So this will be the first of what we think will be 2 pit stops for just about everybody.
Scott Dixon right here doing a heck of a job. He's not a big-time gamer. Will Power plays sim a lot, so Scott Dixon's very new to this, so he'll be coming to the pit lane. We'll see how far these guys go.
On board with Ferrucci coming down pit lane. There you see first gear. Power still circulating, so getting good fuel mileage and obviously figuring out how to manage the tires. And Paul, maybe it's an advantage to run this first stint as long as you can to try to shorten up your final 2 stints.
Well, I agree with you. It seems like the last couple of races pitting early was an advantage, but on this track, as we see another driver come in, looks like he hit the wall coming in. That steering wheel is bent, so
yeah,
an issue.
Left front from Rosenquist, pretty big damage. I think the shock cover might be missing as well. The other thing is if you pit now and a yellow comes out, you're really going to be disadvantaged because you'll go a lap down with a pit stop here at Motegi. As we look at some of the drivers that have already pitted, like Sage Karam and Graham Rahal, they sit a lap down right now.
Saw the lockup coming into the pit lane as he was downshifting and getting down to the speed limit. He locked the tires up and got sideways a little bit as Will Power and Scott Dixon still circulating around.
Hey, Marty, when do you think we're going to hear these, see these Team Penske drivers come to pit lane?
A lot of talk about that on the radio for Scott McLaughlin right now. He actually has TJ Majors, the NASCAR spotter for Joey Logano, considered one of the best in the business, spotting for him and also calling the strategy or helping him out with the strategy. And they're talking about coming when the leaders come. But the way Will Power's running right now, it's incredible that he's able to create this much momentum out front, but also save fuel like he is able to do. But I will say they'll come in the next few laps, obviously, with everyone pitting here. And all the drivers, Townsend, talking about how these tires are falling off and everyone getting way too free at the end of this run. I would say in the next few laps, everyone's coming to pit road.
Yeah, and if they can get to lap 50 and shorten up those last 2 stints, I mean, maybe you can make this on 1 stop if you're getting good enough mileage. It looks like McLaughlin showing that he might come to pit lane as Dixon starts to catch power.
We're inching ever closer to the halfway mark right now at 48 laps, now going to 49 laps of 113. So this car right now, is scheduled pit stop is below half distance. So here's Scott McLaughlin coming down pit road.
Power, Dixon, 1 and 2. When will they go? How far can they stretch this? Meanwhile, update on Kyle Busch because of all this pit stop cycling. Busch has got his way up to 11th. Remember, he stopped very early in this Firestone 175 as we ride on board the PNC Bank Honda with Scott Dixon.
Well, the way this is going to cycle, guys, because Kyle Busch took that early pit stop, as these leaders pit, he's going to end up the leader here for a little while. So we'll see what his strategy is going to be. Will Power's peeled off. He's coming to pit lane.
Let's listen to the entry. Townsend, to your point earlier, the drivers are being considerably more cautious on pit road entry this week in comparison to Michigan a week ago.
Yeah, the penalty for speeding on pit lane just brutal, effectively going to end your day, is here comes Scott Dixon. Dixon pitting from the lead, drops down below that apron in turn 3. Has to be very careful here because there's really no camber to that pit lane, and he'll come to the line. Marty?
You see Scott Dixon. You also see Simon Pagenaud and Ben Bretzman, the strategist for Simon Pagenaud, as this is the battle for the lead on the racetrack. Sage Karam out on the racetrack, but these other guys pitting right now. Karam currently is in the lead as Scott McLaughlin unlaps himself, but they're coming down pit road, and Ben Bretzman said, hey, we're going to match fuel with tires here, so they're going to do a short fill for Simon Pagenaud. I would assume the same for Scott Dixon as well, to match how long it'll take to get the tires on for those guys. And Joseph Newgarden, also one of those guys who pitted earlier. So this group that you mentioned a moment ago, Sage Karam, Joseph Newgarden, Takuma Sato, and Kyle Busch, they're the top 4 right now, and they pitted earlier, so they can run a little bit farther.
If there's a yellow late in this race, those drivers, Karam, Newgarden, Sato, and Busch, could be sitting really pretty. If they can just stretch this stint as long as they can, they might have a shot. And the action's getting crazy here on the green flag stops. Hunter Ray to the inside, having a look. I think that was Harvey. Maybe that's Alex. That's Palou.
Seeing a lot of guys, a lot of guys with slightly older tires, guys coming out of the pits on new tires. So you see the speed differential as Palou looks to the high side on Graham Rahal.
Good to see Takuma Sato in the race here at Motegi, where he got to drive this track in 2017 after winning the Indianapolis 500 at a Honda Appreciation Day. Of course, Honda, owner of the venue here. Palou down on that low side, looking for an option. He's always been in the mix in this iRacing IndyCar Challenge. Marcus Ericsson down on that low side. Whoop, Jack Harvey, Ryan Hunter-Ray running together. Things are getting busy out there.
Yeah, a lot of confidence right now on those new tires as we see cars now. More cars coming to the pits as Sato peels off and comes to the pits. Look at all those fans in the stands, and they're all here to watch Sato.
At 55, so that's just under half distance for Takuma Sato. He might be able to stretch it to the end. That could be the move that wins this race.
Back out at McLaughlin and his Team Penske teammate Will Power and Scott Dixon. An Aussie and 2 Kiwis.
Yeah, Scott Dixon just patiently hunting the back end of McLaughlin, searching for some clean air. We ride on board with Santino Ferrucci right now in that Sealmaster car. And Ferrucci's had a busy day, had a few issues at the start, but he's been working his way back up.
Concentrating on his line as we look at his home video here. Upshifting through the gears. Getting the information from his spotter and his engineers. There's 2 cars down on the bottom there. Ooh, that's close right there. They almost touched.
Ferrucci's in 8th place in the Sealmaster Honda for Dale Coyne Racing with Vassar and Sullivan, and should wish Sully a happy birthday today as he watches with a lot of excitement at his driver doing well in the top 10.
Scott McLaughlin with a little slide coming off of turn 4s. Scott Dixon is looking for a way by.
And look at Dixon, he's getting so much experience now on the sim racing, running this close to McLaughlin, figuring out how the dynamics are going to work. That could pay huge dividends if he finds himself in a battle for the win at the end. I think nobody's going to have more experience running this close to another car than Scott Dixon.
Well, and how about the lap count, PT, as far as laps completed? Now, remember, Scott has not done all of the races, whereas Will Power and Scott McLaughlin have. McLaughlin and Power have completed, coming into today's race, all 175 laps that could have been completed. There's only 3 drivers to have done that so far. Dixon, before the drop of the green today, had only completed 50. So there's a massive disparity, not only in this iRacing IndyCar Challenge as far as laps turned, laps completed, but just period. Scott doesn't do iRacing, whereas Power and McLaughlin have more than 1,000 iRacing road course starts. Then you add the oval starts to that, so well experienced. So Dixon performing brilliantly here.
Well, it just goes to show why he's a 5-time champion. He's picked this up with great ease. And Townsend, you know, and I know, this is not easy. It can be very, very frustrating getting good on a sim.
It certainly can, and you can think you have everything figured out, but then you end up at a new track and a new race situation, and those Firestone tires, they do wear just like the real thing. In fact, for more on Firestone, let's check in with Lisa Boggs.
Lisa, hi. We welcome you, and thanks so much for your support of this Firestone 175. I want to ask you, first of all, before we get to the racing, Twin Ring Motegi is not that far geographically from Bridgestone's global headquarters in Japan. What the company is doing to try and help people, help communities around the world in these very trying times?
Yes, first and foremost, on behalf of Bridgestone, thanks to NBC, INDYCAR, iRacing, and all of the drivers for the great work, and we appreciate the time today. Times like these, we're really all in this together. And we have a shared priority in ensuring the safety, the health, and the well-being of our communities, of our customers, of fans, of our teammates. And we at Bridgestone are very mindful of our role in providing products and services that are critical in these times. We're working on a number of fronts to help, whether it be where available at our manufacturing facilities, locating protective gear and masks to hospitals. In Akron, where our race tires are built, we have got folks that are using our prototype machines and their 3D printers, and they are making masks to donate to the local frontline workers and hospitals. And really importantly, our Firestone Complete Auto Care stores are open for service. It is essential business. And they have also decided to take all of the customer donations that have been made thus far this year. About $840,000 will be donated to the Boys and Girls Club for their COVID-19 relief fund. So we're proud of the work we've done. There's more work to do. And again, we're all in this together to do everything we can in these unprecedented times.
Well, Lisa, on behalf of the IndyCar community and the racing community as a whole, thank you so much for doing that, because there are a lot of people in need. On a lighter note, what have you made of the iRacing IndyCar Challenge? Hasn't it been fun?
Oh, this is absolutely terrific. I mean, as a way to keep people engaged, as a way for all of us to social distance get together and watch some racing and watch the guys. And listen, we're a competitive group, all of us. You don't do this unless you are. So I think it's really good for all of us to keep up that competitive spirit and enjoy a little racing, even if it's quote iRacing. And love bringing in folks from the other series. I think it's just terrific all around. And again, kudos to everyone involved.
And the good news is we've still got 2 more to go after this. Lisa Boggs, Director of Bridgestone Americas Motorsports, thank you so much, not only for your support of this Firestone 175 and the NCT IndyCar Series, but also helping to combat the coronavirus well. So 47 laps to go. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and really start getting our teeth into some strategy calls and see how the second half of this race out as Scott Dixon goes to the lead momentarily. We'll be back. Firestone 175 continues. Twin Ring Motegi. It is the 4th of 6 rounds in the NTT INDYCAR Series iRacing INDYCAR Challenge, and it has been fun, and there is quite the race at the front between Will Power, Scott Dixon, Scott McLaughlin, and last week's winner and reigning Indy 500 champion Simon Pagenaud, and then throw Marcus Ericsson in the mix as well. But really it's these three, Power, Dixon, McLaughlin, as we welcome you back. Lee Diffie, Townsend Bell, Paul Tracy, and Marty Snyder. A really enjoyable day, and it's great to have IndyCars back at Motegi, even though it's virtual, because there were some phenomenal races here. Of course, you can't forget Danica Patrick's win, one and only win in IndyCar competition. She spoke to Mike Tirico on Lunchtime Live about that and her career recently. Don't forget Lunchtime Live, noon Eastern, every day with Mike and his special guests, as Scott Dixon goes to the inside, takes that lead away again from old rival Will Power, Marty.
This has been such a fun battle to watch, going back and forth. And again, Power taking the lead from Scott Dixon. And Lee, it reminds me in these top two drivers, just the iRacing world and how it's helping the real world. Let's take the leader, Will Power, right now. Adam Fortner is a spotter today as Dixon goes back to the front. And he said, I want to try Adam. I just want to see what he would work out. So they're trying him here in iRacing, spotting for him, and he'll spot for Will in the real world. And Mike Cannon is the engineer for Scott Dixon. He's going to be the new engineer this year when racing gets going. And they're trying it, getting to know each other here in iRacing. But I tell you what, this battle for the lead's been amazing between these two the last few laps.
You can see, Townsend, that Will Power's front tires are starting to go away. He's using a lot of road on the exit. He's almost hit the wall a couple times. You can see the car slide up right there, very close to the wall on the exit. But Scott Dixon has been working over Will Power for the last 10 or 15 laps.
Well, for these IndyCar drivers that have been iRacing experts and thinking that you've got an advantage on Dixon, that advantage is gone. Scott Dixon has figured this deal out. He's put in the time, and he is right at the front showing the mastery that's led to 5 IndyCar champions. I think the driver that's happiest right now is Scott McLaughlin, because he's sitting back there in third as we ride on board, and he's letting Dixon and Power chew up their tires as they go back and forth. They're leaning so hard on those Firestone tires right now that I think it's really a big advantage for McLaughlin to just chill right here, get good mileage, and save tire wear for when you're going to need it at the end.
Yeah, these 3 front cars broke away. They had quite a big lead, but Simon Pagenaud now has clawed his way back towards these guys. So watch out for him as well, last week's winner. So keep an eye on that white and black car just behind Rossi.
Yeah, Rossi not on the lead lap. Is the DXC Technology Chevrolet for Team Penske, last weekend's winner. And Pagenaud was genuinely thrilled. He was so excited to have been victorious last week, and wife Haley delivered him a bottle of champagne at home once the race was finished for him to celebrate. In the post-race press conference, he was just delighted to have brought that victory to Team Penske.
You can see Simon Pagenaud's gearing is absolutely perfect. All blue lights at the end of the straightaway going into 3 as he downshifted to 3rd gear coming up. And the Will Power runs up high again, so his tires are gone, Townsend.
I think all that battling with Dixon in dirty, turbulent air is early in the stint. We'll see if it comes back to bite Will Power, as he really is struggling to get anywhere near Dixon. At this point, he's just struggling now to keep pace as McLaughlin starts to close. And then further back behind the Napa car of Alexander Rossi, you can see Pagenaud drawing ever closer with another patient run, just like at Michigan.
And further behind those guys, Townsend, Marcus Ericsson in 5th, and then the 2 drivers, the 2 guys who have been doing some iRacing track racing, Jack Harvey, Zach Veach running 6th and 7th. Veach has not cracked the top 10 in this iRacing series, so that could be Zach's best result if he can hang there today with 32 laps to go.
This has been great action. I just realized 30 laps to go, Lee. I don't want this thing to end. We should go another 100. This feels like it's going to end too soon. I'm having fun.
Here is the Gainbridge Honda for Andretti Autosport. Zach Veach. He's kind of all by himself there at the moment, but that's good. Paul, isn't it? Because you can control your own race, so to speak.
Yeah, well, this is all going to come down to fuel mileage here. We've got guys right on the cusp of being able to make it or not. We don't know if these front cars can make it, so it's gotten a little bit spread out. Other than the front, we've got the top 4 guys now all battling, but we don't know, Townsend, what's going to happen with these guys in the middle of the field that pitted really late.
Yeah, here we see Jack Harvey coming to pit road with 30 laps to go, and I think I can answer your question, Paul. Dixon, Power, McLaughlin, all with 30 some odd laps on this stint. The furthest anybody went was Dixon on the first stint at 52 laps. So that would put these cats 10 laps short, Marty, of making it on fuel.
Yeah, in fact, they told Joseph Newgarden, who's sitting in 7th right now, we need you to save us 10 laps. And he kind of laughed on the radio, said, 10 laps? I can't do that. But back there you see Simon Pagenaud making some big moves. The window is open to make that final stop, and Pagenaud said, we are going to undercut things. Ben Bretzman calls him to pit road here. They told him, go as hard as you can go after this. So Simon Pagenaud coming to pit road early, and they did this last week. Remember, they had the right strategy. Ben Bretzman making the call. These guys up front have used their tires up, but Pagenaud making the call to come to pit road. You see Will Power dive into pit road now, and it's time for everybody to come to pit road, Lee.
Scott Dixon pulled out a 1.3 second lead, but he's right there in front of Power, so they are all coming to the pits.
I like this strategy, though, which is split the final stint so you get the maximum tire wear. Don't force yourself to run deep, as all 3 of these leaders on pit road. We'll have to see how precisely they can come to the box and who wins the race off pit road as Ericsson takes the lead back up front.
This has been a really good run from Marcus Ericsson. He told me that last week when he started from the pole position, he was a little unsure on when to go, and that kind of caused a bit of a bottleneck behind. But now he's really starting to find his feet in this iRacing competition. He actually competed for real in the Japanese Formula 3 Championship and won that championship. He raced on the road course in Motegi, but never the oval, so he was excited about today as he pits. Zach Veach inherits the lead of the Firestone 175 with 26 laps to go.
So you've got Veach, Newgarden, and VK. And the question is, will they really try to stretch this stint and their tire wear and just make a splash and maybe go fuel only at the end? As we see Rinus VK riding in 3rd.
This is going to get real interesting now with guys that are running on old tires. We've seen the fall off in the Firestones, and these guys like Will Power, Scott Dixon, McLaughlin will be coming out with fresh tires, and they will be slicing through the field because they'll have fresh tires on.
Dalton Kellett pits for the final time. Riding aboard the Shell Delara for Team Penske, Scott McLaughlin.
Brand new tires. He's out on his 2nd lap now. There you see Will Power just in front of him. So these two really didn't separate from each other on pit road. We don't see where Scott Dixon is with these guys. He might have got off of pit road slow, Townsend.
Looks like Scott Dixon's just behind in 9th. So you're right, Paul. Will Power doing the best job on the green flag sequence. Scott Dixon losing out just a little bit, but he's following close behind. Dixon just about a second back.
All right, Rinus VK. Carpenter Racing in the Sonax Chevrolet. That's what we saw a lot of last week in Michigan. And VK was not a competitor then. So as he builds his iRacing experience, that was a tough lesson to learn because he was running well.
Incredible pressure when you make a green flag stop on these high-speed ovals. You don't want to soft pedal it to the line and lose too much time. You try to push the limits, but it can bite you, Paul. We've seen that so many times in the real world, in sim racing. It's frankly the same.
Yeah, Newgarden, he's been laying in the weeds all day. We haven't really talked much about him, but now he's the leader of this race with Felix Rosenquist in 2nd, Oliver Askew 3rd, Will Power on fresh tires chasing down the leader as we look at a car coming into the pit lane.
This was
locks
VK.
it up, and VK noses it into the tire barrier there, knocks the front wing off.
Yep, just overcooking it a little too much. It's a terrible feeling because you know effectively your day is done. They can get the car fixed virtually and rejoin, but very, very costly mistake with 21 laps to go.
9-second gap for Joseph Newgarden. So he's got a nice lead here. Can he make it to the end? We heard he was 10 laps short. He can afford to breathe it a little bit and try to save some fuel, Marty.
Well, that's the thing, is that out front, you've got to wonder how much of that gap he can preserve, guys. But again, when they started this run, they told him we are 10 laps short. So we'll see what Joseph Newgarden can create from this. He was trying to save fuel, but that's a lot to ask Townsend to save that much fuel. Meanwhile, Simon Pagenaud and their camp, they feel very confident. They undercut those guys by a good bit. They're sitting in 5th. They pitted 1 lap earlier, gained a ton of track position, but I'm not sure they gained enough over McLaughlin and Power. That, they feel, is the battle for the win with Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, and Simon Pagenaud. But the question is, how much did Joseph Newgarden save?
Newgarden's got a 19-second lead over Will Power, who has no issues, Townsend, on fuel or tires. Can he save enough to make it to the end?
Looks like he's trying to slow up a little bit, Newgarden, as you see Wickens trying to unlap himself there. So now Newgarden, I think, has gone into desperate fuel save mode. I just can't imagine he can find 10 laps of savings here because he's out front leading. It's 36 seconds that you lose on pit lane with a full stop. So with only a 19-second lead to Will Power, it's all looking pretty challenging right now for Newgarden.
He's got to get in the draft with these guys and back off the throttle pedal and save some fuel. He was out there on his own, running pretty good lap times, but his current pace right now is a 28.5. Will Power just ran at 27.8, and the gap still at 18 seconds back to Will Power.
I think we're going to be in for a great finish with Power, McLaughlin, Pagenaud, and Dixon, as these are the only 2 drivers to not make their last stop. Sage Karam and Joseph Newgarden.
Well, Karam's done a good job getting himself back up into the top 10 from the starting position of 31st. He's been grinding all day and doing a super job. 17 to go in the Firestone 175. How's this one going to play out? Here comes Oliver Askew.
Oh, little lockup getting in, so really tough to get it down to the speed limit. But this is what Newgarden needs to do. Now he's got some cars in front of him, Townsend. He needs to draft and lay off that throttle pedal to save fuel.
I know, it's very hard to do when you've got Will Power closing at a second a lap faster. Power is only 16 seconds back, so I'm sure Newgarden's having the debate on the radio, Marty, saying, how in the world am I supposed to pull this off, guys?
Yeah, in fact, he said on the radio a moment ago, I think you need to bring me in. You know, the other part of this is the handling is a challenge, right? Townsend, these Firestones are just worn out. They don't have enough speedway fuel to make it to the end, or it's going to be close. But Newgarden even himself said, I think it's time to bring me in. I wouldn't be surprised if they pit in the next lap or so for Joseph Newgarden, which would mean his teammates, all 3 of them, Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, and Simon Pagenaud, would battle it out for the win if Power or if Newgarden came to pit road.
And I think that's what we're going to see as we go back with Power and McLaughlin separated by about half a second. Simon Pagenaud comes into view in the black and white car just behind, and then all the way back in the orange and blue PNC car is Scott Dixon. Don't forget how good Dixon was managing his tires on the second stint as Newgarden comes to pit lane.
There we have it. The question has been answered, so that will put Will Power at the top of this race over his 2 teammates as Alexander Rossi leaves in the Napa Honda. Has been off the lead lap for the majority of the day. By the way, updating you, Tony Kanaan and Max Chilton have withdrawn from the race. They DNF. As Power comes past VK, McLaughlin's in his tow.
Simon Pagenaud in 3rd, so this is going to be a Penske Battle Royale down to the finish line. These cars are all within about a second of each other. Will Power leading right there, going into turn 3. McLaughlin right on the back. Simon Pagenaud has a couple lapped cars in between him, but watch out for Simon Pagenaud.
And Scott Dixon's only 2 seconds back. I just get the feeling that Dixon's going to figure out a way to catch these guys, and I wonder how much lap traffic might factor. I'm looking ahead of Will Power to see who might be up there. There's a couple of lap cars as McLaughlin fans out really wide in 1 and 2 to pick up clean air and try to save his tires. Dixon's got to clear these 2 cars. Actually, that's Pagenaud. Dixon needs to clear VK to get into this hunt.
12 to go, and a Kyle Busch update for you. He is 16th at the moment.
Robert Wickens has now moved his way into the top 6, so having a great day. Marcus Ericsson in 5th, so those guys are separated a little bit from the front 3 Penske cars.
Oh, look at this Power trying to break the draft of his teammate Scott McLaughlin. He knows
like
what a danger he is.
He's making that move, Townsend, like he did at Pocono, trying to break the draft. Remember that move?
Absolutely, and his teammate Pagano learned that at Indy, or used that at Indy last year, the snake on the back straight with Rossi trying to battle it out for the win. So all of the real-world tricks coming into play with 10 laps to go here at Motegi. McLaughlin getting really close now.
Oliver Askew trying to unlap himself on fresh tires. It takes him out. McLaughlin's gone.
Askew taking out 2 Team Penske drivers.
Damage to the front of Power's car.
Power has damage.
No front wing on the car. McLaughlin comes to the pit. Simon Pagano is going to take the lead here on the outside.
Oh, the teammates!
They touch. They touch again.
Wheels down the back straightaway.
Unbelievable.
9
laps to go.
Pagano around the outside of the wounded Power, but Power comes back.
God, Dixon has to be loving this. Look at Dixon, how close he is now. Dixon must be laughing his head off at the Team Penske guys going at it fist to fist.
Will Power making his car super wide. Here's Scott Dixon's on board as he goes around the outside. This is a lapped car that he's fighting with, but he's got to get in contact here down the back straightaway. Will Power is snaking all over the place.
Rinus VeeKay is making that Sonax Chevrolet very wide for Scott Dixon to get around. Meanwhile, Dixon is getting close, super close now to the top 2 Team Penske Chevrolets.
These lap cars, an absolute disaster for the leaders. Pagano with a clean car. I can't believe how quickly Power can hang on. He's missing the entire right side main plane, and now Dixon's in the hunt. 7 laps to go. Scott Dixon getting hungry.
Inside of Will Power.
He's looking at the inside of Will Power. Will Power's tires start to go away as he almost brushes the wall. Turn 4.
Oh, Dixon needs to be careful. Don't let Power lose it and come across your bow here. Power gets wide again. Must be so frustrated to have things go south in the closing laps. There goes Dixon clear. Now the only thing separating Dixon from a win at Motegi is Simon Pagano.
And guess who the last driver to win an IndyCar race at this venue was? It was Scott Dixon in 2011. That was on the road course, and they had to race on the road course because the oval was damaged due to an earthquake. But Dixon has been victorious on this track for real, and that was back in 2009 as he chases down the Indy 500 champ Simon Pagano.
Dixon has trouble though, because Castro Neves, Penske teammate in that Pennzoil car, even though he's a lap down, is now looking pretty racy, and I'm sure Castro Neves is going to try to get in the mix with Dixon. How do you think that's going to play out?
Simon Pagano, look, doing exactly what he did in last year's Indy 500, but he's doing it not on the last lap. He's trying to break the draft. 4 to go.
This has been such a measured, methodical run from Scott Dixon. This is why he's a 5-time champion. Has he done a lot of manufacturer sim work? Absolutely he has. He has not done a lot of iRacing. He's learnt the nuances of this racing platform, and now you are seeing Scott Dixon at his best hunt down the Indy 500 champion. Here you go.
And Dixon spent so much time behind Team Penske's Will Power earlier in the race, learning the aero, learning how to adjust his hands and feet with his technique to run close. And I said it earlier, I think it's going to pay big dividends as they come to the line, Diff, for 2 more laps at Twin Ring Motegi.
Well, think about this, guys. It has been such a morale-crushing week for the Chip Ganassi Racing organization, with the controversy surrounding Kyle Larson. Gineering team, as an aside, have been making medical equipment for Indiana hospitals to combat COVID-19 and the coronavirus. Can you imagine what a morale boost this would be if Scott Dixon can take this PNC Bank Honda to the win here at Motegi? 2 to go, PT.
Simon Pagano goes in deep into 3. He's shown his hand. He's going to sweep all over. This is the last chance here for Scott Dixon as he goes to the inside.
He's going for it. Oh, almost touched Pagano. Castro Neves is going to stay out of this, and I think that might be it.
Dixon placed his bet, and I think it came either too early or just not enough as Pagano comes through 3, Div.
Final corner. And the Indy 500 champ, who was thrilled to win in Michigan, is going to win in Twin Ring Motegi. Simon Pagenaud in the DXC Chevrolet has done it. Post-race crash, as he may have slowed a little too rapidly for Scott Dixon, caught Dixon by surprise, and Castro Neves got tangled up in it as well. But it's back-to-back wins for Simon Pagenaud in a thrilling final, what was it, 10 laps where just everything got unhinged.
What a battle with his teammate. They banged wheels, they touched. Will Power had damage, lost the front wing, and it ruined his tires. It killed the front tires, and what a race by Pagenaud.
I can only imagine Will Power and McLaughlin probably going to want to have some words with the rookie Oliver Askew, laps down, mixing it up there in the closing laps as Pagenaud, just like he did at Indianapolis, comes to a stop at start-finish, and we'll wait to see if he jumps out.
He's gonna light it up like he did at Michigan a week ago.
Terrific set of burnout. Crowd's going crazy right now, on their feet. That's a pretty sweet burnout, Paul.
Yeah, he's loving this stuff. You know, he's not a huge gamer either. He's just gotten into this. So to consider this, these guys like Will Power, like you said, have thousands of hours and races on this, and Pagenaud, first time to winner.
And I don't care if you're a gamer or not. Every one of these guys are racers, and if this is all that we can do right now, every one of these guys is having a blast. This is what they do. Pagenaud, Dixon, Power in the top 3, but great runs for guys like Karam and Veach and Graham Rahal in the top 10.
Just got a message that the champagne has been delivered to the Frenchman. Haley, Simon Pagenaud's wife, had the champagne on standby and has delivered it to the now back-to-back winner. The first time we've had back-to-back winners in this iRacing IndyCar Challenge. Sage Karam won the first race, McLaughlin the second. It's Pagenaud back-to-back. Boy, there are some stories to tell after that big pile-up early in the race and guys who tried to make their way back through. Kyle Busch there, finishing just outside the top 10 in 13th.
Joseph Newgarden looked like he was going to go for the win, but he had to peel off and come to the pits for fuel. A disappointing day again for Alexander Rossi. He has not gotten the handle of this iRacing, Townsend.
Well, frustration, I'm sure, for guys like Tony Kanaan that have put in tremendous amount of time and really focused on improving. Great qualifying for Kanaan and a good start, but got caught out in an early accident. As we see some other drivers with mechanical issues, Nazar and Hinchcliffe, I'm going to call them digital mechanical issues there, along with Max Chilton out early.
Yeah, something happened to Hinch and did not even start the race. Unfortunately for James, that was the second time that he's had some technical glitches there. We're going to break for a quick break and come back and hear from the top 3 in what was a very eventful final stanza of the Firestone 175. It's another victory for Team Penske and Simon Pagenaud, the Indy 500 champ. Back in a moment.
she was going to surprise me.
So there you have it. Round 4 of the 2020 iRacing IndyCar Challenge complete. 2 road courses, 2 ovals, and 2 wins for Team Penske's Simon Pagenaud. Today it was at Japan's Twin Ring Motegi, and the driver of the DXC Technology Chevrolet joins us now. Simon Pagenaud, for a relative newcomer to iRacing, you've got the hang of this thing pretty nicely. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Lee. Wow, it was a crazy race. It was very hectic with Will at one point, and then Dixon at the end. But man, we work hard. I tell you, I work hard all week to be competitive, and I think I'm catching up. I think I'm getting there. Certainly, I get a lot of help from Ben Bretzman, my race engineer, on the strategies, and as you can see, he's doing a great job with pit stops. But man, I'm having a lot of fun. It's so stressful because you're still lacking a lot of feedback. So I'm relearning another way to race, and but I tell you, it's funny. It's the same behavior than usual for every drivers out there.
Hey, Simon, it's Townsend. Great job again. Such a patient drive today. But I got to ask, have you ever won a race and have second place go full rage mode across the finish line on you?
No, but I'm sure that's what happens a lot of the time in the driver's head. So, it's I mean, Dixon can be upset. It's the last lap of the race. I'm racing for the win, so I'm gonna go for it. He went for it too. It's sometimes reverse role to other situation in real life. So, Dixon's a great racer, and it's always a pleasure to race him. I really enjoy it.
Well, congratulations. Paul has a question for you.
Hey, Simon, congratulations. So how are you managing your days now? How much time are you putting on the sim and workouts to be ready for when the real race season starts? And is Norman feeling neglected?
Yes, he is, and he feels that way, and Haley as well, unfortunately. But I train every morning physically. I get up and I train up until 12:30, and then I have lunch. And then at 2 o'clock I get on 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock sometimes I get on the sim and start training until 6 o'clock. So every day. That's the only way you're going to be competitive. Everybody is such athletes, such competitors. You want to be as strong as them, you got to put the hours, and I always believe that hard work pays off.
Simon, you said to me, I think it was the week before last, about how full on and serious you are being, as all the drivers are, but you're possibly putting in a little bit more effort on the physical side of your training. So when we do go back to the track for real, you're going to be ready. Doing these 4 weeks so far, the physical fitness side of it put to one side, just the strategy and working with Ben Bretzman, your regular engineer, and being in race mode all these times, that's going to keep you sharp, isn't it, for when we do go back to the track?
I tell you what, Lee, I think Ben and I discovered something that could be very useful for us in the future. And I myself found that iRacing is really sharpening me up. So I'm definitely going to use it a lot more in the future because there's so many details you can work on, just like a race weekend, but you can repeat and repeat. And what's really hard for a driver is to be able to replicate a perfect performance. So here you're in an environment that doesn't change, although iRacing has setups so you can put dynamic weather, dynamic track change, although here in the race it doesn't change. So if you do a good lap one day, the next day you should be able to do exactly the same. And I'm definitely finding a lot of benefits, and being able to work strategies with Ben is also a huge advantage for my racecraft.
Simon, where are you finding the patience in these races? Like at Michigan, here at Motegi, a very patient drive to manage your tires. Where are you finding that approach? Because you see so many times, I find when I get very ragey doing the iRacing, and it's very intense. How hard is it to develop that patience?
It's very difficult, Taz. And even everybody says I'm patient, but inside, I'm boiling. I want to go to the front. I know I can. But I'm trying to take care of my tires, taking care of my fuel. I'm also doing a lot of, I'm trying to understand how the cars around me are evolving. And I could see, some tire wear on some cars. And I knew that if I was a bit more patient, by the end of the run, I would get them. Like, for example, with Jack Harvey, he damaged his rear tires. So I took advantage of that, so on and so forth. And I could also see that Askew coming back 1 lap down, was trying to get his lap back, was very aggressive, and we almost hit each other already when he passed me. So I knew there could be a chance that he mixed things up in front with Scott and Will, and it certainly happened. So, unfortunately, I think Will had a great race, and he was very strong. Scott was strong as well, McLaughlin. But I think the strategy put me up front, and we finished it. So that's all that counts. That's all that matters.
Well, Simon, congratulations. Phenomenal run. And that's now a 1-2-3 for Team Penske. Your 2 wins, and Scott McLaughlin. Sage Karam's the only non-Team Penske driver to have been victorious this year. Enjoy that champagne. Enjoy some time with Haley and Norman, and we'll see you next week.
I will. It's my weekend now. Enjoy. Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy. There he is, the race winner of the Firestone 175. Let's check in one final time with Marty Snyder. That was that was so enjoyable at the end there, Marty.
It was pretty incredible, Lee, I have to say. So I'm just trying to keep a tally of who is mad at who, if I can. So Scott McLaughlin is mad at Oliver Askew. Will Power is mad at Oliver Askew. Simon Pagenaud was a little mad at Oliver Askew. Simon Pagenaud was mad at his teammate Will Power, and Scott Dixon is mad at Simon Pagenaud. So that just goes to prove that, yes, even in iRacing, these drivers get upset. Simon Pagenaud talked the entire last half hour about how hot he was inside of his seat, talking about how he was sweating. He's wearing one of his black fire suits as I was watching him online. It's just amazing how intense this racing really is in real life for these drivers. Joseph Newgarden talked about how his heart was beating because they're racing so close. It just takes them to the real thing. It is fun with all that's going on, Lee, to have some fun in iRacing with these drivers. And I tell you what, they take it for real.
So this is for the second week in a row with thanks to Jostens. This is the virtual ring that Simon Pagenaud has received, very much in the vein of his Indy 500 Champions ring. And Jostens is a long-time partner of the NTT IndyCar series. So thank you to them for their continued support. Guys, let's do, I don't want to say some cleaning up, but let's get some other guys into the mix. Back-to-back top 10s for Graham Rahal, third top 10 for Santino Ferrucci, Zach Veach. His best result of this, Sage Karam, came from 31st to 7th, another really good run. And Jack Harvey was in the mix for most of the day.
Yeah, these drivers have worked extremely hard today. And, Paul, I don't know about the whole virtual ring thing, but the time that all these guys are putting in, it's time for some real prize money, some real bling. I mean, they're putting in the hours and putting on a great show as a result.
Yeah, Will Power's got to be frustrated. He's been a front runner on the pole. He's led every race, but you could see at the end of today, he was very frustrated that his teammate chased him down and snatched the win away from him.
There were 2 other really good results and bests in the iRacing IndyCar Challenge. That is Marcus Ericsson and Robert Wickens. Those guys performed really well today. So we've got 2 rounds left. Circuit of the Americas is the next round, and then there is a fantasy track to finish off this round. Where would you like to see it go, Townsend? Real quick.
Oh, I'd say, someplace like Talladega, some crazy high-speed, wide-open oval where we can take the virtual risks and run 7 wide would be a blast.
PT, we've got 30 seconds left. Where would you like to go?
I think the crown jewel would be the Indy 500 on iRacing.
Well, who knows? That could be the 6th and final race. We will wait and see. But Circuit of the Americas next weekend. Simon Pagenaud victorious in the Firestone 175 for Team Penske. To back wins. We'll see if he can make it 3 next week. He's really in the mode, and that was an exciting one. Thanks so much for watching the NTT IndyCar Series iRacing IndyCar Challenge here on NBC Sports. On behalf of Townsend Bell, Marty Snyder, and Paul Tracy, I'm Lee Diffie. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.